Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Fulton Sheen Institute live interview segments. Dr. Peter Howard, and I'm real privileged tonight to have joining with me in the same room. Imagine that. My wife, Chantal. So she's more famous than I am. And I'm not famous at all. But she is. She's been, anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to welcome everybody who's joining in from around the world. And before we get into things, I want to encourage you right off the bat to go into the comment sections and let us know where you're from, and let everybody else who's tuning in know where you're from as well. It's great to connect the world in just an hour. People are just in the middle of the night. If you're, I don't know what time it is in the Philippines. What is it, 14 hours ahead? Something like that. But this is it's just great to be able to do that. And before we get started, too, I want to encourage you to a few things. One, first, it's been really encouraging to see how many people are subscribing now to the channel, and the feedback that we're getting. It's been awesome. So thanks for doing that. So if you haven't already, please go. I put my little subscribe button on here, right there. Well, you can't click on that one, but that's just a reminder to go down just beneath the video, and you'll see your subscribe button. Also, I highly recommend and encourage you to hit the like button, because all these things get processed. In a world where all the good things are being censored, this is our way of letting others know these are the kinds of things that people want to really hear about and learn about. So the more you're liking, the more you're subscribing, all of these things, you're actually building up the new evangelization for that. So I want to encourage you to do that. Also, in the description section, there's an opportunity for you to support what we're doing. I realized that I didn't have that in the previous episodes, so they're in there now. But if you feel moved, and I invite you to please support what we're doing. As you can see, we have our little operation going, but we want to grow this in really a huge way. So every gift is greatly appreciated. We pray for our benefactors every day, and so I just want to encourage you to do that as well. And you've heard me in the past. I'm always letting you know about one of our, I guess, our partners in what we do here, and that's the Aroma Rosary. And here we are with the foundress, the creator of the Aroma Rosary. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that later on, because we're going to be talking a lot about homeschooling. But this is an opportunity for you to hear it right from her as well. This is the table where these things are being made right now. In the past, like my kids are sitting around there making their rosaries right here. So anyway, without any other distractions in the beginning, I want to welcome and move my mic over. See, we are a small operation here, and this bi-directional is really important.
There we go.
So hopefully our audio is going to be great, because we're not having you coming in via Skype. That's always been a challenge in the past. It can get a little choppy audio or video. This should be pretty crisp.
Let's hope so.
Anyway,
all right.
My voice is deeper, so I'll go a bit further away. But I want to thank you first off for coming. If you haven't noticed, you probably can't right now, but we are ready to have a baby like any minute. The due date is the Transfiguration, August 6th. But it could be right during the show. Okay. So this would be super exciting. Hey, we want this to go viral. We won't have the delivery on here, but at any rate, it's just a joy to have everybody on here. So, Chantal, thank you that we were able to literally squeeze you in here. And before we jump into something, I did forget one thing that excuse me, that I do want to quickly plug. Sorry, I got to get this out, because tomorrow is when I'm going to blast it out. One of the great passions and one of the great dimensions of the Fulton Sheen Institute is formation. And so I am launching the first 2 courses. They're mini courses, you can kind of call them, of the Sheen Institute this September. And if you go to the homepage, if I can do that real quick, you'll see right there. There they are. We've got 2 awesome courses, and they're fitting because as the Fulton Sheen Institute, it's important to know what inspired the Institute, why Fulton Sheen is a pivotal, central player right now for all that's going on and for the mission of the church to understand what's going on, how we can respond to it. He was a prophet for our times. He's a saint for our times. And there's no doubt in my mind that all that movement to block his beatification was to keep him out of the spotlight that he deserves. So we have 2 classes that are going to be starting in September. They're 6 weeks, and they're very accessible when it comes to the pricing. I want this to be in every home, and I really want it to be kind of like Sheen entering into your living room, because his wisdom will be in every class, and I think you'll be really inspired. So the first one, as you can see, is Fulton Sheen's plan to rebuild America. This is where you're going to figure, in 6 weeks, you're going to be so ready for November. It's going to blow your mind because you're going to know what's going on in the world, what's going on in our country, what the enemy is without, the enemy within. How do we solve all these things that Sheen saw that? And it's going to blow your mind. So I highly recommend that one. And then also we have Treasure in Clay, which focuses on the man, Fulton Sheen, the man, the saint. Oh, I'll scroll down a little bit if I can go. There we go. Scroll down on the screen there. It's kind of behind my picture. We'll see how that comes through the feed. I don't know what that's going on there. So I don't know what that was, but maybe not a good idea to scroll on that one. Anyway, Fulton Sheen was there and not the Blue Flame. At any rate, I just want to encourage you to check those 2 out. There is an early enrollment right now, and between now and the end of August. I think it's going to be pivotal for everything that you're doing with your family. I just need to I got to get out of all this stuff now. I don't know what happened. There we go. All right. Enough of that. So, but check it out. Check it out. And let's be the ones who really pack this class. Share it with your family, your parishes. So good. All the announcements, advertising has gotten out. Let's turn to the subject of the hour. We're at the end of July. We're weeks away from the madness really kicking in of schooling. I don't even know how many places are aware of, whether or not they're going to have schooling, if they're sending their kids to school, whether it's public school or Catholic school. I think over 100 Catholic schools closed down since the COVID thing broke out. And so we have a tsunami of families, whether they like it or not, whether they're ready or not, now just jumping into the homeschooling world. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming when you're in it. Yeah. And so, you came from, your whole background was homeschooling. I came from a very different background. I'm from New Jersey. I didn't even know what homeschooling was, or if it was even permitted, until I was in college. And I met people, some of my friends, and I'm like, why are you so much smarter than I am? you read all these things? I went to Catholic school, and it was a good one. We didn't do that. But just a different world. But now this is like I don't like using the same way, the new normal, but this is the normal now. Like this is, families are having to brace with it, whether they're piecing extracurricular activities or, our friends up in Syracuse that we know, Nina and her family. Oh, yeah. Her daughter, her whole family is cross-country runners. National champions, and like the senior year was gone. Yeah. And this year, who knows? So, as a good introduction, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about your background, growing up in Colorado, not New Jersey, and what your own experience was in homeschooling.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's fun to be on your show. I've been watching from behind the scenes, and I'm excited that you're getting it off the ground here. So, yeah, let's see. I have come through the avenue of homeschooling. I always like to say we were like the ultimate DIY family. It was just the idea of, if we could do it ourselves, why not? And so that being said, I'm one of 6, in the middle of 6. Both my parents were educators, and my mother had a conversion, and she just at a certain point in our journey realized that going to public school didn't afford us the opportunity to do what we wanted in terms of the formation of our family. There was no time for feast days and rosaries, and we were always being pulled away. So she pulled us out. And I was in 4th grade. I was a good student. I loved public school, actually. And I remember being a little apprehensive when we first started. And, the reality was that it was never smooth sailing. It was never easy. In fact, most of my homeschool experience was was engrossed with chaos and trial. My parents had a business in their home. When I was 6 years old, they had twins, a severely handicapped brother. The demands were constant. And there was no great curriculums or support groups or co-ops, or I was the only Catholic homeschooler I knew. And so it was a bit of a pioneering time. When I was 14, my dad passed away from lung cancer. I spent a couple of my years living away from home, which was interesting because homeschooling shifted again into a different modality when I was actively pursuing athletics. So there was nothing smooth about my homeschool journey. It was always up and down. Every year looked a little different. But that being said, the things that I remember so vividly are our morning mass, our rosaries, our times when we were unpacking current events together, the lives of the saints, and the way in which my mother so just really beautifully instilled in me and in us kids a sense of mission and leadership. I remember from very early on just being told, you're called to lead, be a leader, rise, and she was always saying things like, my intention isn't to give you public school at home. That's not the goal. She would give, I loved all the little expressions she had. Love, learning, life. In that, that was the whole mission, was that we would be full of the love of the Holy Spirit, that we would have a passion for learning, and that it was all within the context of real life, that we'd have skills and the ability to transform our own culture. And it's interesting now looking at homeschooling today, in light of that, because I know for a fact that it was for these moments that she was preparing us for, all of those years of education. It was never about, let's just check a box. It was prepare, because times are going to be changing and you're going to be called on to lead.
I remember when we first met, you had mentioned this about your background, and your mom would always mention, times will not always be like this. And when you're growing up, with our parents, and sometimes you just kind of get used to, like, okay, I know. I remember when I was young, and we have an age gap, about almost 10 years between us. And I remember when I was younger, and I started coming into my faith and learning about Marian apparitions and like this prophetic age that we were in. And then I started to realize, am I going to live to the year 2000?
Oh, I know.
Like, am I going to see all of these things happen? Am I going to make it to college? Am I going to, so what am I working toward? And
will I get a kiss before Y2K? My girlish dreams.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but here we are, and it has happened so fast, and there's not too much time to process. And I think even from a scriptural lesson standpoint, it's like Christ, always be ready. Yeah. Are your oil lamps? Do you have oil in them? Where are you at? Because I don't know of anybody who hasn't been completely caught out, just been completely prepared, I should say, because, it was so fast, and we still don't have the answers. People still can't even go to mass.
I know.
We're blessed where we are. But here we are. There's a scrambling, you can say, going on. Even those who have been doing this for a while, there's new opportunities at the same time. So it's also, wow, more people are stepping into the homeschooling arena, not just from a parental standpoint, but what things that are being offered. And then so it's a positive but overwhelming experience of, now there's even more things to choose from.
Right.
So before we even get into the present, you mentioned a little bit about how you were homeschooled and kind of the philosophy of your mother. What did it concretely look like?
Yeah.
Because every homeschooling experience can be very, very different.
Yeah. Well, I can share from my own experience of being homeschooled and then trying to homeschool as well. Trying. So yeah, we have, it kind of has hit me square between the eyes that right now we have a senior, a 10th grader, a 7th grader, a 4th grader, a kindergartner, and about to have a newborn. So that is the entire spectrum of the K through 12 and, birth to 12 responsibility. And I would be lying if I told you that I have been a stellar homeschool mom. It's been there've been brilliant moments and moments that I know my children will look back and cherish. But there are many moments as well where, I've fallen short. We've had all kinds of distractions, transition, movement. Sometimes we've been in co-ops, sometimes we haven't. So I think if I were to just say concretely, the one thing that seems to be pretty synonymous from the homeschool moms I've had exposure to is that it looks different. And that's really not a surprising reality when you think about public school or any other education model too. There's always the flux, the change, the new curriculum, the new standards, the this, the that that's happening. So I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of a break. And especially for those that are trying to enter into this time now with these beautiful, lofty, holy, pious visions of what homeschooling is going to be. I think you should just take those and just toss them, because that's not ever how God works. He always is taking his people into the desert, challenging them, pushing them, testing their limits. He's okay with the mess. And that's one of the biggest things that I've had to embrace, both in my own education and as well as in my own efforts to home educate. Practically speaking, though, there are a few key pillars that have to be held on to. So it's not that we're pitching the principles or that we're lowering our standards. It's that we're actually recognizing that there are certain things that are just more important than others. And I think we could talk a lot about what I think is, more important.
So to summarize that, using your own words, I'm her husband, so I get to do this. So what's synonymous among everybody is that they're all different.
You got it.
I'm always being the bad husband.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They all share in anyway.
Exactly.
So if you had to whittle it down, though, from your experience and then looking at how it has continued, like you talk about in your book, which you'll mention a little bit from, what is it from childhood to motherhood?
The school of the family.
Right, school of the family. Well, I'm thinking of the, kind of your tagline for that. From what was the first line? Is it childhood?
Yeah, well, right. I mean, that's the whole scope.
Anyway, but this kind of thread of, is there a struggle that you found is always there?
Absolutely. Yeah, the tension is always there. Embrace the challenge. Embrace the tension. The tension, it's a holy tension. It's important because reality, that's life. And I think that's the fundamental thing, especially as we're looking at a big shifting cultural moment, is, our children need to be able to function not in a conveyor belt, not with bells and dings and consistency and organized perfect sports. I mean, that's all, like you said, it's been tossed out. And it's not that those things have been bad. It's just simply that, in my opinion, right now, especially within the context of the church and the way in which the Holy Spirit is moving families to be on the front lines of leading and changing culture, is we have to be agile. We have to be able to pivot. And of course that means that there's going to be days that are incredibly frustrating. But I think that's the key here, is that we need to be ready to take on the reality of our changing culture and our changing times. That's, throughout history, that's one of the core studies that I would say is essential, getting into history, giving our kids a perspective that, the challenges, the trials we're facing, while they might be new with a new name, they're actually really old trials, recycled, repeated, and that this isn't the first time the world has seen persecution, challenge, sickness, pandemic, disruption, economic breakdown, government overreach. I mean, you name it. If we can keep that lens, on one hand, it's kind of daunting, but on the other hand, it's kind of reassuring because you just realize, again, God's comfortable with the mess and he knows how to draw straight with crooked lines. And that's how I feel about my own education when I look at it and I think, gosh, I remember finding my easy grammar book, for those of you that are familiar with easy grammar. And it was, started in 1996 and halfway through it was 1998 and the book still wasn't finished when I found it. So you can imagine like that, I don't know, my grammar, I mean, it's an area that has some holes, but I wasn't ever afraid of holes. I've just pushed through. Even when it came to the humiliation of writing a book and having it edited and having to humble myself to the fact that, I don't think I ever caught that aspect of grammar. So it's okay because we can always learn and fill in those types of gaps. That's not the intention. I think, at least in my opinion, that families should have when it comes to homeschooling it's more about the spirit.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at now, excuse me, when you look at the times in which we're living in now, that add another variable, you can say maybe a panic variable or not. Concretely, though, where are you now? Because being at home and it's late at night, and I see you're on your computer, you're talking to the kids. Nights. It's like a military operation of you're adapting, you're overcoming. What are the options? Yeah. And to be realistic, for a lot of families, and even we've been hit really hard by the COVID with our work and those kinds of things. And so you have the economic variable. How have you navigated that? Even for our family, sure. But I think this is an important thing for others because they might be wondering, how can we do it? What if we don't have much? Is this an option, or am I, is this just for some? It's just a wealthy, endeavor.
No, there's so many options. I would encourage you to avoid curriculum chaos. I'm notorious for getting stuck in curriculum chaos. I love curriculum. If you honestly need help, there's a lot of wonderful resources out there now available, whether it's online courses. I personally equate curriculum with personality. Our kids are so different. And while I personally love Charlotte Mason and I want to implement, beautiful Waldorf chalk paintings, and I'd love my kids to all knit, and and I love classical Jane Austen literature and philosophy, I have to be realistic about the way in which my kids receive education. And so it's easy to get caught up in curriculum chaos. For the sake of those that are just starting, there's a lot of great curriculums that are just set. I'm actually returning to some of those support tools myself because, like I said, the scope is so big for me. There's wonderful programs, and I've been hashing through them and looking at what does this one highlight? What do we need to fill in? What do we need to shift? And what do we need to change? But if you're just starting, I encourage you to just embrace a solid Catholic curriculum and let that be good enough. And even if when you're going through it, something feels overwhelming, let it go, right? It's better to do less than more. I like to call it the core four. These are the four key things that I always highlight with the kids is they've got to journal write, they've got to be reading, they've got to be doing their math, and they need to be doing music. Outside of that, science, and when I say reading, I'm talking about literature. I'm not talking about, twaddle, right? Not just cheap junk, but really good books. And that can be audio. It can be, so those are my core four. And honestly, like any good classical student, we're adapting wisdom from other people, right? We're diving into their wisdom. And so a lot of what I like to build on is the wisdom of a few key players. I really am a huge advocate of Andrew Pudewa. He talks about, instead of the core four, he talks about what do we need to be doing to address character, knowledge, and skills. And we could dive deep into each one of those and look at what does that look like for today. But again, that's kind of the curriculum conversation. And maybe we want to dive in there deeper. I don't know. We can see what questions come through. I don't claim to be a perfect organizer of curriculum, But I find that, you have to roll up your sleeves and get in there a little bit just to know what's available, and then begin to kind of sort it for each kid's needs, or group where you can. There's minimalist curriculums out there. If you need something really basic, again, less is more. And when in doubt, read out loud to your kids. Good audio, good literature. I think that's really critical in terms of the education formation aspect.
But what about the economic dimension of this? Because we've discovered where we live now, and we're in northern Idaho, and we've been here just a couple of years, and it's an interesting place, and we're talking about economic things, and how the hardships have. We're concerned about losing access to certain things. You start making sacrifices of maybe it's extracurricular, or maybe it's even a program. But we've been really blessed, and you discovered this, that there's outside help, and in certain cases, even like here, even the state has certain programs that can, if you're really wise about it, you could integrate it, and you can take your homeschooling to a whole new level. It might not be purely academic, but it could, in the sense of like, it might not have the books that you want, but it's filling in a lot of the important holes. And why don't you talk about that? Because that might be something that those who are watching, either this or the recording later on, of wow, that could be a game changer.
There's a lot of creative options that are emerging, both through public funding, as well as adaptations with online learning for emerging students, high school students, dual credit opportunities. I think the most important thing is that as homeschoolers for a long time, and even in my own experience as a kid, there was kind of this sense of like, let's just wall off and push the world away and hide. And that's not the gospel, right? We have to engage. And just in the same way, we need to be asking lots of questions to our district, to researching, and just allowing ourselves to become informed of what things are available. I think for those that are coming into homeschooling, honestly, they're bringing a lot of that with them, and some of us are going, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know I could do that." Of course. So yeah, we found a great program that's offering support for a lot of extracurricular funding for our kids' music program. They're allowing us to use great Books Academy resources. There's a lot that you can do within that that allows us then to have the support. And I think that's really encouraging. So every state's different. The Homeschool Legal Defense group is a really important place for people to start if they're just launching out, because you need to know. Look it up, Google it.
Repeat it again?
I think it's Homeschool Legal Defense. HSLD.
What's their focus?
They're going to give you the laws, the parameters. What can you do? What can't you do within your state? We're very, very blessed to be where we are, and many states still have a lot of flexibility. But we also have to be aware that, while at the same time they're encouraging us all to distance learn, or what are they calling it? Remote learning. I forget exactly what the terms are now, but there's also a lot of apprehension about homeschooling in a lot of different states. So we need to be prudent. We need to be aware, and we need to leverage, in my opinion, what freedoms we can to help our homeschooling initiatives remain accessible.
Well, yeah, there's the accessibility, but there's also leveraging these kinds of programs. They're offering thousands of dollars, so that for us, because some of it is, I guess it's delegated to extracurricular things.
Yeah, yes and no. There's again,
because I think it's a healthy thing in this environment. Is part of the homeschooling program is you've got to get out.
Yeah.
You cannot just live in a box from September to May or whatever. Even if things start going back in that direction, it's one of the healthiest things is to get out, and even just physically, health and mentally health, to get out,
sure,
and take advantage of those things.
So yeah, everything comes at a cost. So you got to just weigh, what is the state asking? A lot of times, if you're not interested or comfortable with that approach, there's all kinds of affordable homeschool models. I was just looking at Salt and Light, a beautiful, simple, minimal curriculum that you can leverage books from your library and use simple, I mean, again, simplicity I think is really key. I happen to have kids that really want they're academically driven. They just want to, plunge forward and dig deep. And so I'm constantly being kind of called on the table to bring more before them. But at the same time, I'm also challenging them to a new perspective. And this is just kind of something that has emerged as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, is the distinctions between homeschooling and that public school model is a lot about being self-driven. It's a lot about managing your time, and it's about learning the skills that are going to lead to your success, right? I mean, obviously in an entrepreneurial environment, there's no boss, there's no timetable, there's no, you're responsible for your budget. You fail, it's on you. And in a job environment, you have somebody telling you when to show up, what to do, when to leave, etc. So I feel like those two models kind of juxtaposed with homeschooling and public school is a really important model for us to give to our kids, because the innovators that emerge from this time are going to be the ones that are shaping culture. So in my opinion, that whole entrepreneurial perspective and helping them to realize, yes, we need good, solid classical formation, but how can we make things then practical, right? How can we, make sure that you're developing skills that are going to be able to move you forward in a very dynamic fashion for the mission and the goals that our kids feel called to. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to help our children realize that, again, it's not just about a grade or just checking a box, but it's about the quality of education. Keep it simple and make sure that your kids are rolling up and getting their hands dirty in life. That, to me, is school.
Well, I want to come back to what you were talking about with being a homeschooling mom and then also an entrepreneur. So you are working. That's been a dynamic of our family now for I don't know how many years, to help, which works out in times like this too, just to help cover the different angles. So thank you for that. But before we do that, let's give some concrete things. What have you decided and why for our family for this year? Not like this is like an advertisement for things. Honestly, I don't even think I know.
I don't think
but my point is, I just know that you looked at different things. People are presenting, and and also as something to think about. We have, we're gonna have 6 children, but from senior in high school all the way down to 4. I know that's how I am. Like, oh, this is all interesting, and it's like, okay, we got the challenges, but like, what did you guys choose? Like, what are you doing? Because that might be a place for them to start. So you're doing the Angelicum Academy or whatever.
I was awake in the night, still working it out.
That's every night. She's awake every night. Every night.
So if you're awake in the
I
night,
hear is,
just like,
like, what are you doing? Anyway.
Should be reading great books. No,
be praying.
Actually, I do some prayer. I definitely do some prayer, and I do some great audios. But yeah, so my oldest daughter, we're working out a dual credit approach where she's taking some key pieces. She's focusing on piloting. It's a very kind of hybrid year. She's got to get ready to be an adult. So we're trying to fill that in with work opportunities. Hers is still a little bit in flux. Our 10th grader is incredibly she's been on a classical track, and she's academic, and she wants to pursue music, and she wants to pursue the arts. So we are utilizing the Great Books Academy program, or the Angelicum Academy. They're two together. They offer an opportunity for Great Books high school courses to be given as college credit, and possibly to even earn an associate's degree by the time they graduate high school. She's willing to dive in there, and she's kind of always been my kid where I'm like, you know what, go do your school, and she can handle that. She's very self-driven. My 7th grader, we're going to do kind of a hybrid. We're going to use some of the materials that are recommended through the Great Books program for Socratic discussion, but we're adding in some other elements that, in my opinion, are just important for her. My 4th grader, he's my facts kid. He wants math, and he wants zoology, and he wants to learn how to code. and he wants to hunt and fish and hike and build. And so, we're going to be sitting down doing some book learning, but we're also going to get our hands dirty hopefully this year. So my focus honestly is getting my older kids as independent as I can so that they can really function a lot on their own. And then hopefully my fourth grader and my kindergartner, we can really invest a lot of time there. That being said, seventh, fourth, and kindergarten, we're going to be doing a lot of things together. Story of Civilization by Dr. Philip Campbell. Excited to dive into that. That's a new resource for me, a great history program. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then I use Andrew Pudewa resources for a lot of my younger kids, for writing, for grammar, for let's see, what else do we use him for? Anyway, and reading, lots of great reading, great books, good books.
And Andrew Pudewa, he's the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing.
Yep, IEW.
Yep. And right there near Clear Creek Monastery, about an hour or so from Tulsa.
Near your sister.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great man and a great program. Just extremely gifted.
We need to get him on. Andrew, if you catch wind of this.
I will get Andrew on.
He's
Thank
wonderful.
You. We will get him on. No, I will. Because I'm actually going on a show that he's connected with in Tulsa. Well, we have to revisit. I don't know. It's supposed to be September.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Anyway, there's a radio show coming up for that. Okay, well, before I get into your book, because many women have read it from around the world. It's been nice when people reach out and say, "Oh, I came across your book and it inspired me." The environment of a homeschooling family, of just the family dynamics, can never be overlooked.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, oh, okay, if we get into a rhythm of things, and well, just like the virus and all this, I don't say quarantining, because it wasn't exactly what it was, but the stay-at-home orders, it was, for many families, it was good. For many other families, it was really hard. There's the dynamic of just family life. And you've used the phrase, healing your homeschool. Mm. And I know it, in our family, that's a big theme in and of itself, just because it's very important. You're always dealing with all the dynamics of children, parenting, marriage. The healing is a big thing. Can you explain why that is so important for families to recognize?
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of homeschooling families that have fried themselves out and fried their kids. I think that there's a lot of unseen brokenness that I know we've been challenged with through different seasons where we have been, just either too gung-ho or bitten off more than we can chew, or been way too distracted with work and things have fallen through the cracks. So healing your homeschool is just kind of a term that really resonates with me, because this year in particular is kind of a return or a resurgence in God's providence for me to be able to nurture a baby and nurture my kids. And I feel that real need to return to discovering what's the core of our family culture. It's been tumultuous. We've traveled, moved, shifted, been in ministry, out of ministry, work, right? And so I know I'm segueing a little bit into my book, but the whole idea of understanding what are the pillars of our culture, how are we going to hold on to that? What are the ideals and the charisms that we want to convey to our kids? It is important. It is important that we know what those are. Not so much that we can beat ourselves up, but so that we can truly have a spirit of common ground and common ideals that anchor and root us back, because the culture is too loud, right? And that's what happened for us when we went through quarantine. All of a sudden there was kind of this lull in the busyness, and we had to stare each other in the face, and we had to realize that, wow, the family meal, the daily rosary, the walk. In my pregnancy, it was like every day during quarantine, it was just like, let's go for the walk every day. And as we emerged out of that kind of back into more activity, we began to realize, like, wait, hold on. Let's capture some of those key pillars. areas where some families may thrive. It might be more hospitality, invitation. It might be more activity. What are the things that you really want to hold on to for your homeschooling culture? And Father Nathan Cromley, spiritual director and friend, the head of the St. John Institute, has been a huge advocate for a long time of helping families to know, identify, and leverage their family culture, their family why. What is the backdrop that you're going to use to judge the other decisions you make? And so I think, we're returning to that. It's not that we do it perfectly, but that when we revisit these things, almost like a rule of life, we're able to assess again, and we're able to come to each other and say, I failed. I've had to come to my kids, my teenagers, a lot lately and say, I know our homeschooling's been awful. Trust me again, right? Like, let's revisit this. Let's dive in again. Let's try again, because these are these characteristics, these virtues are so important. I want to instill them in your hearts, and I know that we can do that if we try again. So when we were kids, we went down to Mexico, and we would pick up these little hermit crabs off of the rocks, and we would say, start over, and we would pick them off and drop them back into the water. It was really cruel. But I can't help but feel like that's kind of what God does to us in our homeschools. He's just kind of like, you thought you had it together, start over. And that's the Christian walk. It's the faith walk.
Well, I think,
lots of mercy.
Yeah. I think that maybe the way I see it is you can't ignore the intimacies of family life that a homeschooling environment is always there. Like, if you let things slide, that are negative, if relationships are stressed, it contaminates the whole family, and then it affects your homeschooling. Then you get discouraged. Then everybody wants to leave. Everybody wants to kill each other, metaphorically speaking. But you know what I mean? It just ripples out of control. And the healing part is, and it doesn't mean like you have to convene a council, but it is the simple outreaches of, like you're saying, it is the constant resets. Because if you don't, it can explode. And when you're in an external schooling system, it's easy to almost dish that off, because it's a conveyor belt. They're off to this, they're off to this. Everything's completely controlled and out of your home, and then they're only home for kind of checking like a hotel and drive me here, drive me there. That's I would say that's how it was when I grew up. But the mentality though of that was there. So now with the shift, it's a reality. It's like you have to face your homeschool, your family dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like your book, The School of the Family. I mean, that's kind of where I think I've seen it, where that came from. And so why don't you? I mean, you've already been talking about elements of it.
Yeah. So I'll unpack what I have.
Is that is everything in that book, or is that something completely different?
Yeah, so I've created a bundle of resources that I think might help. I'm finding them helpful as I'm revisiting them. I wrote a book about 10 years ago, and honestly, for much of that 10 years, I shelved it, because every time I'd read it, I'd be like, I wrote that? Oh my gosh, I can't live that. But I was inspired largely out of my own homeschool journey, and the love that I emerged from high school with, for learning, for my faith, my passion. And I don't take credit for that. That was the work of the Holy Spirit through my mom in particular. So I share a lot of my mother's wisdom in that book. And the idea is, yes, from childhood to motherhood, the family is the novitiate. It's the cradle of truth. It's where the civilization of love is nurtured. It's this dynamic of family life that really is where formation happens. And in that sense, we need a return. I mean, now we see it even more than ever. The brokenness of the family, the redefinition of the family, right? This is where, as Catholics, we have to stake our claim. We have to put the stake in the ground and say, our family dynamic will not be ruptured. We're going to hold on. The gates of hell are going to try, but we're going to hold on. And that's been really hard for us. There have been really intense moments where our family has felt like it's going to, dissolve and dissipate. And we've had kids wanting to just, so we've been there, right? That being said, the school of the family is really where we need to be, we need to be recognizing that that's the milieu God wants this formation to happen. So back to the bundle. I also was invited to be a part of a great podcast last year. Small snippets. I had a feature every month called From Ideal to Real, because that's been my journey. I had these lofty pipe dreams, these desires, these holy ideals, and I've had to really just rein it in and bring it down to really practical, day-to-day, implementable, bite-sized tips. So that's what I did. For 10 episodes, I was able to do that. So first of all, if you want to get a hold of those, you can go to schoolofthefamily.com, and that's going to be a free download. You can just enter your email and you'll get access to those 10 free audios, which is really neat. And I've been invited back for another school year, and that's through the Homeschool Connections podcast, Homeschooling Saints. So yes, that podcast is really great, just as a side note too. Homeschool Connections.
Tons of resources there.
Online
Walter
classes.
Crawford, he's
really great.
Classmate of mine from Franciscan University.
Yeah.
And to see what they've been doing, and
yeah.
you were talking to them too. What was they're expecting over 1 million families?
I think that's
or is that the whole network?
That's homeschooling in general. A million families.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I can just imagine how many more.
Yeah. I mean, it may be even higher than that.
Yeah. What happens if 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
Like they just shut everything down, or states do.
Yeah. It's going to be. Yeah.
Or 3 weeks into the fall, when they're already announcing the second, third, or something wave, everybody shows up. Got to go home. I mean.
Yeah. Anyway, Homeschool Connections is a great resource. Homeschool Connections and their podcast.
Yep.
And I'll be featured on there. So that's exciting. Ideal to Real is going to be back. So you can get the first 10 by going to schoolofthefamily.com, download those. Then you'll be offered an opportunity to get my digital flip book. So currently I'm out of stock of my books in print. So I've got to revamp that. I have 2 books, The School of the Family and The Family Rule. Both were written 10 years ago, and you have to have that lens of a young mom writing from just pure passion. I think you'll find them very helpful, though, in terms of giving you that bigger vision, right? When we talk about wanting to go from where we are stuck to where we want to be, we need vision. And I think that the School of the Family book and the Family Rule, those tools will be helpful. So you can read them online. You can read them on your phone. Once you have access, you can do whatever you want with those. The physical books are coming. And then lastly, we put together in that same bundle a guide that Peter and I did a few years ago called the Ascend Guide. And this was a really fun project because it was really about how do you find your family culture. And there's implementable, it's like a retreat. It's like taking your family on a little retreat, and it walks you through how to identify what are the core values you're going to hold on to. How do you implement that in a daily rule of life?
It really is a retreat. I mean, when we started, I don't know, when was that? 5 years ago, we launched off on our own and did Heroic Families, which is kind of like
Heroic Families.
It's been like morphed into the Fulton Sheen Institute, like family dimension. But that's really what it was. Yeah. It was like, what are the key things that we first found as a family, as a married couple too, that families need.
Yeah, and honestly, and everything
those four things turned into the Ascend event, and it's still something that is you could say it's offered, but I'm now working on a digital version of that so that it can just be brought into families. Yeah. But it's like it's the key things that families need.
Yeah, how do you shape a rule of life? How do you map that out? And again,
it's simple though.
Really
you walk
simple.
away with, and this is for me, it's important too. It's you walk away not just like overwhelmed of, oh my gosh, I have to figure all these things out. You do have to figure out what God has for you, but these other dimensions, the church has given us all of this wisdom, and that's why I really like the little book. I don't know if it's as small now, or if it's morphed into
the rule of
the family rule, is because that is packed with just basically quote after quote from the church, and then little practical examples in the side. Yeah. But I think that's, my, this is a big part of the Institute, Fulton Sheen Institute, is realizing the times in which we're living. And times are only going to get more crazy, and they're going to get more difficult. I don't at all feel nervous to say that. I think it's an absolute fact. And we're going to be dependent upon the essentials, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's marriage, our family, it's our faith. It's so, maybe you can comment on that, because once again, I almost feel through the airwaves, people are still saying, but I'm still nervous. I'm still panicked. And it's one thing if I have to shift to homeschooling, but I'm just so worried about the future. And, I just want to know, like, what should I really focus on? Because that might be just enough.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, I think that the School the Family Bundle is intended as to give you as parents, especially, a glimpse of what's essential. I'm going to talk about things in the book like the restoration of Christian culture, practical things. We need to be looking at, very fundamental things like, how are we going to feed our families? How are we going to take care of our health care? How are we going to, educate our kids at home? How are we going to preserve our Catholic identity and our Catholic culture? What are the practical things that need to happen? John Sr. in particular, I think, really hit it on the head when he wrote that book. So that's a great reference.
What book is that?
It's called The Restoration of Christian Culture. The Destruction of Christian Culture, I believe, is the first one, something like that. It's pretty depressing. So maybe just skip to this one, because we don't really need to focus on that. I think that most of us are pretty aware that, the philosophies and the culture, we kind of, and especially you guys on the Fulton Sheen Institute, you guys are always going into that. So
well, Sheen said it. John Paul II said it. Our civilization is coming to an end. It's collapsing before our eyes. So what are we going to build on top of that? And that's actually what the course is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But
so I like focusing on those things. I like focusing on the restoration. I like focusing on the rebuilding. I like focusing on those things. And Sheen's great. To this day, I still remember from my childhood, Mom pulling back, Lift Up Your Heart and Peace of Soul, where he's talking about these incredible realities. And he wasn't afraid to talk about the realities, the evils of communism, and the way
they are. They're right here.
Yeah, and the way in which we combat that within our own heart. Side note, another cool little reference. There's a free Fulton Sheen curriculum. Just look it up, free Fulton Sheen homeschool curriculum. And I'm going to be printing that off by Katie Bogner.
I need to get the links to that.
Because, it's great. It's really fun. And it's going to be like building little flip books and going through his readings and stuff. So, we will be utilizing that as part of our
Look for that on the website. I'm going to have to get that connected because I've wondered about.
Yeah, it's great.
He's written 60 books. It covers everything.
It's really sweet. And lots of fun printables, especially if you like that kind of thing. If not, just, I would say The Way to Happiness, Lift Up Your Heart, like just start reading little excerpts. You don't need to. One thing I learned is, we might never finish all the great books, but if we can at least delve into them and get our feet wet, right? So
everything she's written is a great book. So they got to redefine the whole curriculum.
But anyway, I think that the School of the Family Bundle will help you at least kind of like situate your heart and your family and give you hopefully some really good tools and insights and we're called to. And again, we never can fulfill the call. That's not till heaven, right? We are living in a dystopian environment. The utopia is to come. But we, we need to be aware. We need to be aware of what we can do, and whatever we can do, that's enough, right? That's enough for today. And that's one of the things you're really good at reminding me about when I want to do more and I want to have everything and I want to, make sure the kids get every aspect and that they all, play stringed instruments and like we might not all be able to do that moving forward. Although, that's one of the things we'll continue to prioritize, God willing.
Sure.
But, I think that the School of the Family is a good place to start. So I hope that people will check that out.
Okay. There it is. Where do they check it out?
Schoolofthefamily.com.
Great.
Yep.
Before, what I want to do is I want to take questions if anybody has any. So I'm looking at a feed We only have a few people who've chimed in. If you have questions that you want to ask that you haven't had an answer to, put it in the comment section, and Chantal will do her best to answer it. And so while you're doing that, thinking of your questions and putting it on there, two things. One, for fathers in this realm of homeschooling, some fathers are active in it, actually doing elements of it. At one point, I was a lot more active. I haven't been now as much, really, but it probably is going to change. But one thing that I want to say to fathers, because this is something that is important to me, is you are responsible for the spiritual culture of your home and leading that, because things get crazy really fast. And this is the backbone of the Fulton Sheen Institute. It's the backbone of your family, and is that you have a spiritual authority in your family to lead them, and you have a special grace that's there to help steer that ship through the stormy waters that we're in, so that the mom, the mother, and the wife, she can focus on her duties as best she can. We didn't really talk about if you're, what it's like if you have both parents working. We talked a little bit about entrepreneurship, but I just, maybe we could give a minute to that. But as far as the fathers go, we've got to be active in our families. Our kids need to see us. We need to be the one who's like, the priest of the home, you can say, making sure that your family rosary is said every single night. That's Our Lady.
Come hell or high water.
No, it's not.
No,
Come hell. Yeah, absolutely. Not under pain of hell, but I mean, like, it's at our doorstep, But Our Lady did show them a vision of hell. So to prevent this, I want devotion to my Immaculate Heart and pray the Rosary. And in my family, it is come hell or high water, not like against my kids, but it is like that's the one thing we're going to be faithful to that.
Yeah, it's the one thing,
because it is
in our
you have to have a spiritual strength behind this whole thing, or the devil's going to get in. Because as we've mentioned so many times, Sister Lucia, the final battle between God and Satan is between marriage and the family. So you better believe homeschooling is going to be in the crosshairs. So my thought, and I'm not the expert in all of this. I'm not an expert at all when it comes to homeschooling per se, but as the one who's always looking on the outside and watching our kids' development and being involved as a father, I just think that your culture at home is probably the most important. If I had to take a takeaway, it's your culture, literally the cult of your home. Like, what is it that your day wraps around? So as we don't have any questions, I think, at the moment, but
okay.
To wrap up, what would you want to offer as a couple of key takeaways?
Okay. Well, the culture of your home, the art, the music, the prayer corner, the rosary. The rosary for us is really the one thing, and it's been beautiful. While there's been evolution of love resurging in that right now. The chanted rosary, you have access to that if you want. We'd love to chant the rosary. Whatever it is for your family. Again, yes, Our Lady has highlighted the rosary, and maybe for your family that seems really monumental. So take a bite, right? Like one Louis de Montfort, one Hail Mary prayed well is better than 1,000 lazily prayed. So, if you can gather your family and introduce just a true devotion to, a decade of the rosary, like this is a huge step forward. So, you have to be the barometer takers, and yes, the fathers in particular. I mean, I'm very grateful that you hold us to the family rosary, because there's many days where I'd be like, well, let's just do a decade. And there's times where that's appropriate, but for the most part, it's about perseverance, right? Persevere in building that family culture and holding that up to the best of your ability. The pressures are steep. Culture is always being bombarded. So if we don't offer beauty, if we don't offer harmony, if we don't offer connection and good memories for our kids, I know one of the gentlemen we worked with for some family counseling, he just said the goal is that you give your kids good memories, good wholesome memories, because that's what will hold them in the faith. And that's kind of like, it doesn't mean that everything has to be some idyllic camping trip or something like that, but that we come together and we pray our rosary, that we have beautiful artwork and listen to good music, that we are willing to pull up our sleeves and work together and persevere in those things is really important. So that's my big takeaway. If this year, nothing else happens, focus on building your family culture. That will sustain the formation of your family in the end. That's the school of the family. Other than that, I really do encourage, a rich study of the classics and of getting into literature, especially for those that are perhaps just diving into the homeschool world. This is a lot of what we do, is we go to the sources, right? And it doesn't mean, again, that we have to read Aristotle or Thomas, cover to cover, or
just read Fulton Sheen. He has it all in his teaching. That's his
but
whole
just
mission.
Reading. And then I think practical skills. So going back to
what do you mean by practical skills?
So entrepreneurship within the home, teaching your kids to garden, getting them out in the community, learning how to, for us, it's even beginning to figure out, well, what do we need to know in the event that, things begin to break down, right? What are the fundamental skills of life? How do we change the oil in our car? How do we bake sourdough bread and make our own, kombucha? How do we take care of our health? What are, those kinds of things? And again, I don't presume to think that everybody has to become a homesteading, canning, sewing family, but there's things within the home life that need to be rediscovered, because that is a part of culture, and it is a part of what we see in history, is ultimately people are pushed back on their own resources. How to be self-reliant, I think, is a really important piece of the formation that we bring to our families. I'm a health coach, constantly being bombarded by Catholic families saying, how do I care for my family if I don't have access to mainstream medicine? What can I do? Bring your kids into it. Teach them how to work. For me, my kids are learning how to leverage technology. I'm not afraid of the technology piece in the appropriate ways. So I'm rambling. Anyway, I like Andrew Pudewa's thing. What are we doing for character? What are we doing for knowledge? And what are we doing for skills? And, if it means that only one time this year you manage to bake a loaf of bread, that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. It doesn't mean that you have to, be constant and totally perfect in implementation, but give them rich moments, and they will hold up so much more than just random repetition and pumping them full of screen time. So.
Great. Well, we're basically at an hour. And no, we covered a lot. I have the questions I've been looking at here are the questions that we get asked.
Yep.
Just remember, Chantal really gets asked about all this, and so we just put it on paper. And, I don't see any new questions in the comments.
That just goes to show that I've done a really good job. That's a Peter Howard. See his influence, right?
Yeah.
His Jersey influence on this poor, sweet, innocent homeschooler.
Well, as we wrap up, just a couple of things. One is the next couple of Tuesdays are going to be great. We have two guests on. The next one for next Tuesday, August 4th, is Dr. Anthony Lillis. Great guy, personal friend, really inspired by his teaching. Anyway, he's great when it comes to the mystical life of the church, the contemplative side of things.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
And he's very smart, very extremely prayerful, and he has a gift to articulate these things. And as we look at the storm that we're in, he's such a great voice of peace, of how do we find that? Because like just the subject that he suggested was, because we don't have the final title, but it was like mass and contemplation of prayer or something like that.
Beautiful.
And I was just like, man, I haven't even stopped back to really even think about that, yet alone contemplate it. So just having him on is going to be like a contemplative experience. And then the following week we have Dr. Joe Holbrook, and he works with the Avila Institute. He also is going to be an adjunct professor at Walsh University. He's had his own radio show in California. Another great guy. And he also has a book that's coming out with Sophia Press on the power and the importance of intercessory prayer. So I love getting these other dimensions in there, the things that are so appropriate for our lives. So tune in over the next couple of weeks for that. I'm hoping to get Father Heilman in. You might know him from Grace Force.
Yeah,
Just excited. Yeah. Oh yeah. Probably get Dr. Ted Sri on as well. Working on those things. There's a lot going on. Before we go, I mentioned in the beginning, I can't have you leave by just putting on a graphic saying, oh, and look, support what we're doing by the Aroma Rosary, which is great to see. These are all the ones that you have made. But because the Rosary is a staple of everything that we do.
Yep.
There's no way out of it. I mean, the Fulton Sheen Institute or anything Fulton Sheen wouldn't be genuine. It's, because that's the one thing he asks families to pray every day, as he grew up praying in his home every day. This has made our family experience of the Rosary, I think, just gone to a whole new level. Well, tell us a bit about that.
I feel like Our Lady asks this of me, so it's really her gift. But basically, we've created beautiful handcrafted rosaries that are able to hold and diffuse essential oils to help enhance your prayer experience. So you can take an essential oil. I've biblically kind of identified key aromas that you correlate with the mysteries, and you can massage it into the surface of your rosary.
Smell that, everyone.
Can you smell it? So as you pray each of the mysteries, you have an experience of the Rosary becoming very alive and very, 4D. I don't know if that's quite the right, but you know what I mean. You're basically incorporating more of your senses, and the children love it. Apart from that, the rosaries themselves are, I think, really beautifully handcrafted. So, whether or not you're into the essential oil component or not, they're beautiful. But the lava rock retains the essential oil for about 8 hours, maybe 8 to 10 hours. And then the next day you can reapply the oil of the day. So, for instance, in the Joyful Mysteries, we're utilizing oils that are reminiscent of Christmas, frankincense and spruce, and it happens to be a blue oil, so it's perfect for the Annunciation and Our Lady's colors. Lovely lady dressed in blue, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And then we have the Joyful or the Luminous Mysteries, very bright, very intended to be a movement forward, and that's what citrus is. Citrus oils, they're not only just by God's design very bright and uplifting, but they tend to chemically compel us into action. So they're really good for focus, for activity, for mission. And that's what we focus on in the life of Christ during the Luminous Mysteries, the proclamation of the kingdom of God. And then the Sorrowful Mysteries, we use a blend that's very herbaceous, that has myrrh and bitter notes to it that help you enter into the crucifixion and his passion, even aromatically. And then lastly, a blend of rich florals for the resurrection, just new life in the resurrection in Our Lady. Again, her virtues can be correlated with different aromas. So that's the spirit of Aroma Rosary, is both to give you a deeper love of the Rosary. I want families to love praying the Rosary. And for me as a child, I prayed the Rosary, and by the time I'd moved into my adulthood, it begun to wane. It begun to feel a little bit heavy, a little bit lethargic, and a little bit rote. And that's where we began to just stir up again, chanting the aroma, the beauty. These are your feast day rosaries. They're not a plastic, half dog chewed rosary that's happened to be, stuck in the glove box. Although, these are beautiful. And I think that helps elevate our prayer as well, because we're so, sensually oriented as in our own, love of beauty. So that's one aspect of it. And then the last aspect of Aroma Rosary is the mission to help you understand why essential oils are viable tools in your health. So it's where grace and wellness meet. I do a lot of health coaching as a launching pad as families come through this vehicle of utilizing oils in the Rosary. They then want to know, what else can I do with them, and how can I put them to use in a non-New Age way to support my prayer, but also my health. So.
And it also helps support even our work and our family, because both of what we do, we work for ourselves working for the Lord, and the Lord has a sense of humor. Always, not well, it does have a sense of humor, but it's always like, okay, yes, there's a lot of poverty that you have to embrace, but there's a freedom that does come with it, and so it's been a blessing for us to have that. It's so hard just to stop what you're doing and just like automatically be into the rosary in the busyness of life.
Yeah.
Having scriptures to read from, having a rosary with an aroma that actually it occupies your senses and it brings you another level in. I've loved it. So thank you.
AromaRosary.com.
Yep.
And you can know now a little bit more that it's coming from our family. The kids help make them. We have a beautiful family in Illinois that's also stepped up to help in the production. We're looking to expand our network of makers. We're also, my daughters help with Instagram and social media, and that's part of our homeschooling aspect.
Yeah, we
right
didn't
there.
talk much about that, but we've only had just an hour. But that is having work that's related for the family to bring, make that a part of your day. It's almost like a monastery. I mean, the monks, people don't realize
it's not like a monastery.
No, but people don't realize that the religious life is modeled off of the family and not vice versa.
Right.
And that's why there should be a rhythm to
enterprise together is a dynamic.
There's work, there's prayer, there's study, there's recreation. Now the family's free to be able to, to do all of those different things, to combine it all together and use the Holy Spirit. But they're all components.
Yes, for sure.
So we have a couple of things that have come in here before we go, and I'm going to direct this to you. It's just, will we get a list of references or resources, things that you've talked about? Is there something that you have written on these things, or on your website, or is it?
Yeah, put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we can send it to me and I'll copy and paste them in there because I don't know.
We'll put them in the show notes. The School of the Family is just a simple, really little simple guide through the process of how to access those particular resources. Aroma Rosary, we talked about John Senior, we talked about the Angelicum Academy. Yeah, so let's just go back through it. We'll make sure that all those things are put in the show notes so that people can access Andrew Pudua, some of those things, so people know where to go. Salt and Light. Yeah. That'll be fun. Yeah, that'll give us a little project.
There are endless resources. So
Homeschool Connection podcast.
Is kind of what we've found to be helpful. And
yeah.
Take what is good for you, and
and when in doubt, I invite personal. I do a lot of personal coaching. So if somebody wants to reach out, I'm happy to go through just a homeschool strategy session and figure out what do you need, what are your gaps, where do you want to go. And do the best I can to help you. So that's an emerging dimension of my work is leadership coaching, both for families and individuals. And that's definitely means homeschools us too. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pull this mic back here as we wrap up. And I want to thank everyone for being part of the show and tuning in, those who will watch the replay, especially if you got a lot out of this. Of course, there will be a replay of it, so you can go back and watch and take your notes and check the show notes. But if you haven't already, please subscribe and like the video or like the interview. And then also pray about it too. If you want to be able to see these things develop, the Fulton Sheen Institute develop and offer as much as we can, easily accessible to people, and as much things that can be gratis, as we say, I really want to invite you and ask you to support what we're doing. And you can just click on the link in the top of the show notes and it'll take you right to a way that you can do that. You can also do it at the Fulton Sheen Institute website, which is fultonsheen.institute. Once again, you'll see when you go there the courses. This will be huge enrichment for you and your family. You can do it, you could all watch it together. We did that with some of the programs that we have, the search and other things like that. I think you're going to find these live classes to be really stimulating for not only your mind, but your spiritual life and your family life. So check that out, aromarosary.com. There's a lot of ways that you can support what we're doing and at the same time support yourself, enrich yourself in ways that are way beyond what material things can give. So once again, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Chantal. say a prayer. Baby is coming anytime. Thank you, Lord. It didn't happen during the show. And you will all be in our prayers. So God bless you all.